we're making a Hollywood flat. So got my pencil, safety goggles, gonna be working with the chop saw. As it is named, it chops the wood. It's used for cross cutting. So what do I need? A couple of 1x4s. Now I'm gonna piece 4-piece. We're making a 4x8 stock Hollywood flat. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces at 4 feet from the top and bottom. To move my mark to the other side of the blade though, because of the blade thickness. So if I were to cut on the wrong side of the mark, I would lose some of my board. Double checking my mark real quick, and here we go. And I've double checked my measurement and my board. I'm right on 4 feet. We got a 1x4 structure because I'm making a Hollywood flat. 2 pieces at 4 feet. And then I've got the vertical pieces. What's their measurement going to be? The vertical pieces, if I'm making a 4x8, so imagine this is the 8-foot version here. This is the vertical piece. How long does it need to be? We've done this already. And then I'm gonna have to put toggles in. And you know, I typically put in 2. But how long will they need to be? Because why? 2 1x4s, the top and the bottom. 2 1x4s, the top and the bottom. Together, make 1.5 inches. This is 1.5 inches thick. So out of 8 feet, we lose 1.5 inches. That gives us 7, 10.5. Out of 4 feet, because we got those 2 vertical side pieces, we lose 1.5 inches. And so those middle toggles need to be 3 feet, 10.5 inches. Move on to some assembly, and we'll talk about Luan and glue and the type of joint again for a 4x8 Hollywood flat. Okay, so we're going to do a quick assembly here of one of the joints of this Hollywood flat. I'm going to put on some ear protection as well. Sometimes it gets pretty loud in here. You'll hear that in just a minute. I've got some glue here too. Some glue, we're going to piece it together. We've used glue and fasteners. Glue to the face of the 4-footer. Not sure if you can see that. And so notice I have the joint flush, and it's flush to the outside way. And here it comes, 1, 2, 3. Boom. But here we go, a couple more. There we go. All right, so now we're going to put this piece of glue on here. This stapler is much quieter also than that bigger stapler, so I'm not putting my earmuffs on. I highly recommend that you be consistent about protecting your eyes and ears, however. So here we go. You see I lined it up. We already had the glue on there. So you want it flush to the edge, flush to here. Now we can trim some of that off if we need to with a special tool called a router. We'll see if I show you one. But here we go with our narrow crown staples. We typically start in the corner, and then we can move the wood if we need to if it's not flush. And then we put these in about 6 or 8 inches apart for a standard 4x8 flat. Keep in mind, this was just a sample. So there you have a completed 4x8 flat. And I want to show you on the wide, far away shot because I want to show you how tall it is. You can see the framing in here, which we'll get some close-ups of in a second. But so that's 8 feet, just above my hand. I can reach to about 7 feet, 9 inches, maybe 7 feet, 8 inches easily. That's 8 feet at the top. It's 4 feet wide finished. So I'll explain this in several ways in a close-up also, but 4 feet by 8 feet finished. That's the whole sheet of plywood. So therefore, if we've got a bottom piece at 4 feet, a top piece at 4 feet, we've got to take away 1.5 inches for these long pieces to fit, 7, 10 and a half. And then also take an inch and a half away for these shorter central toggles to fit. So over 4 feet, they're going to be shorter, 3, 10 and a half. I'll explain that again in a close-up or edit it together so you can make sense of it. Trying to clarify this to us as we build things. So I'm at 0 with the blade of the tape. I measure out, there's 4 feet all the way to the edge. I've already cut that 4-foot board. And then I cut this 4-foot board. You may remember I said 2 4-footers. And then we cut these 2 long ones at 7, 10 and a half. I'll show you that with the tape measure in just a second. And then I cut the toggles. You can see the joint, still an end to face joint. I cut the toggles at 3, 10 and a half. 1, 2, and I space them out evenly. And in just a moment, I'm going to show you the other side of the flat and compare it to real. I didn't label this wall. You did see it in another set. It is not Enchanted April. Just a close-up shot of the paint job. And then I was talking about this paint job, how up close it looks kind of odd or not really intentional, but then you can see it takes a little shape as we back away.
You went to the shop.
Here's the key.
What did you tell them? It's polished.
I don't need to mark as much with this particular saw because I have the fence. So in this case, let's say I want to go to 10 inches. You can see I've got the 10. It slipped away just a little bit, so the 10 is right on the tooth of the mark. Here we go. I've got my scrap piece of Luan. I just want to show you it's obviously much wider than 10 inches. It's about 20. And I haven't moved the saw since you last saw the cameras running. So now I'm going to cut this piece, to rip it down. It's a width cut because I'm going with the grain. And I'm going to cut it down. So turning it on, and I've got my blade a little bit lower for safety. Technically, I want it not any higher than a finger width above the piece I'm working on. There's 10 inches. Is that camera catching it? Yep, right on the mark. Nail gun or staple gun has some medium crown staples in it. The crown is the top of the staple, and this is called the leg of the staple. The leg length is different. This is the crown, that's the leg that you're looking at. Those are narrow crown. So narrow, that's the crown, that's the leg. Narrow crown staples. Just want to remind you of some of the major tools we use. Chop saw, you saw this earlier. It's for cross-cutting primarily. We can't take pencils for granted. They're wonderful for marking. This is a furniture dolly used for moving heavy stuff by yourself. This is a pneumatic framing nailer in its case, but you can see the nails there. So we typically use these. They're 3 or 3.5 inches long, the nails, and we use these for piecing together 2x4s, especially when we're making platform frames. Medium crown nailer or stapler, you can refer to it as either. This is the narrow crown stapler you saw earlier when we were putting the Luan onto the frame. We've got plenty of hand tools, things for taking things apart, like a sledgehammer. things for assembling things, more tape measures, regular hammers for driving nails, measuring tools, levels, a couple of wrenches, some safety tools. Those are my earmuffs. You saw those earlier. A mask for dust, not just air, but a dust mask to keep us healthy and safe when we're doing lots of cutting. Multiple screw guns or drills. So this is for driving screws primarily, different kinds of tips go in there, but we could drill holes with this drill. Battery chargers. We've got glue. We've also got oil for some of our tools. We've got spare saw blades. We've got crowbars for taking things apart. This is a Sawzall. It's rare that I would use this to put something together. You can see the rough blade. It's better for tearing things apart and cutting apart scenery and then throwing it into the dumpster in smaller pieces. This saw you're probably familiar with. It's called a circular saw. Some people refer to it as a skill saw. I want to show you quickly some different fasteners. I told you earlier, driver tips. So screw tips for the screw guns. There's big fasteners for large timber. Scissors for cutting carpet or metal. I'm just saying, the theater's a fun place. We have rasps and wire brushes for foam carving. Specifically, we use those for Pirates of Penzance. Smaller saws for foam carving, ratchets and other wrenches for for fastening nuts and bolts together, chalk lines for measuring. Probably some chisels in here, what do you think? We got all kinds of fasteners, pipe clamps, things to hold things in place, angle brackets for holding scenery in place. You can see it got painted. Glides for things to glide across the floor, extra fasteners, medium crown staples, narrow crown staples, brad nails, coat hooks. We've got some prop items in here. Drywall screws. We assemble a ton of things with these. 1.25" screws to put together two pieces of 1x4 but not go all the way through. Some casters and things like that. We've got vacuum cleaners for cleaning up after the fact. Get all the dust out of the way. I want to clarify something I was talking about earlier. I was talking about measuring and then cutting. So I've just put this on the end of the board here. You can see, there's the end of the board. Hook my tape measure. I'm going to cut a 1 foot piece. So I'm marking a 1, and I said it's 2 marks. What I mean by that is I'm going to a point. And so here's the mark I made. I call this 2 marks, but it's really that 1 mark. So since this is cutting at a right angle, already set at 0, depending on which piece I want to keep determines which side of the blade I want the mark on. Now I measured 1 foot from here this way. So I want to keep this piece. 1 foot, I even put a mark there just to remind me. I'm going to move the camera a little bit and tilt it down a touch. So here's my mark. And I look on that side of the blade and I put the tooth of the blade right on the mark on that side. And I keep the mark. I don't want to lose the mark or else I lose 1/8 inch. So here we go, keeping the mark, my 1 foot piece. And if I measured well, it should still be a foot, and I did okay. I mean, if we're a stickler, I might be a 32nd off, but that would be negligible. So I just wanted to clarify that measuring and cutting and saving the mark so you don't lose 1/8 inch with the blade.